Go ahead, take it away. Case study number one.
Yeah. So, case study number one is a company in mid-sized B2B company in the enterprise software space. It's a global provider. And I came into the company really to do a couple of things. First, it was to build or rebuild the marketing organization. It's a company that has gone through a lot of change, and but in terms of the investment of and the design and really sort of the marketing as we know it that didn't really exist. The other thing is that it was a company literally that was a house of brands, and the house of brands were integrally tied to the markets that it served. But if you took a step back, and that was as a customer, an employee, a potential investor, a partner, it was very hard to understand what this company did. And really, the only way that maybe you had context or a relationship is you worked specifically with people in a given market and with those product sets. But if you pulled the lens back a bit, you didn't have context for much else. So we started on a journey that said, what do we want to be known for? What are the key products that really are applicable to a global set of customers? And which ones truly were products that are local in nature? And we went through a process. We worked with a great firm based out of New York to help us in the process. And it wasn't just rebrand, it was also repositioning. And finally, it was product rationalization. And the steps that we took are very typical steps. We looked at the market, we looked at our position in the market, we talked to analysts, we talked to customers. And through this process, we came to the conclusion, do we change the name of the company or do we keep the name of the company? And the decision was, the company name, it was kind of an empty vessel. It didn't have a lot of meaning except for perhaps a local market. So there was a lot that we could do with that. And so we stuck with that, but we really built off of what was our strap line or our tagline. And we centered on products that were global in nature. So they were going to be applicable in all markets that we served in the segment, and we served in the verticals that we served. And through that process, we went through a brand redesign, a visual redesign. We redesigned the website. We completely changed the messaging and positioning and really tried to tie these things together so that they were relevant at a global level and really contemplated not only the verticals that we serve, but also the personas where we were trying to build relationships and
Yeah.
ultimately working to sell products and services.
So, all right, here's my first question on this one, because this is tricky. You've got global, regional, local layers to figure out
Yeah.
how it all ties together. Then you've got your industries or verticals. When I've done similar rebrands at that scale, you're just trying to figure out common thread lines.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
long did it take you to get to that thing where, all right, this is a really good idea, but it's also vetted as it relates to all these different scenarios that you have to account for as a CMO?
It actually didn't take as long as you might think. We put ourselves on a really tight deadline. So by midsummer, we were there. We knew what really sat at that global level. We had gone through the product rationalization. We understood what sat at the local level and how we were going to approach that. We had worked and really developed a strong 1.0 on the messaging and positioning. We had completely solved for and just made it Sesame Street simple on the product naming, which was just to use industry names because we knew that we weren't necessarily known to all of our buyers. So if people are searching for things, we wanted to make it as easy as possible versus using product names or names that had been made up, maybe 15 years ago that only somebody who had local understanding would really know. So from there, I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy, but we had ourselves on a pretty tight timeline. And then from there, we went very quickly and into design. We didn't try to do too much in the sense that we didn't redo the website. And in fact, the website wasn't redone until the following spring. But we did, a home page with a couple of pages behind it to make sure that what we rolled out to the market, what people were seeing in terms of presentations and other assets, what people were seeing, the would tick and tie to what at least that top level website experience would be.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about like how you got alignment on everything, because your job obviously is you have to connect to the leadership of the company.
Yeah.
You then have to say, all right, is sales on board with this? And then also the most important thing is, as a customer, is it resonating with them? So how long did that process take to juggle those different audiences?
Well, we did that in parallel. And in fact, the move or the decision to move forward with a rebrand actually started when I started. And it was something that the CEO and, in fact, the board really supported. And we, at that time, were owned by private equity, and they believed that there was a lot of benefit in going through this rationalization and rebrand process. And then from there, we had different departments, clearly product, engineering, sales, finance was even involved. I mean, we had all human resources. Everybody that needed to be involved was involved. The other thing that we did, and I thought this was a really bright idea, and it wasn't my idea, actually, it was the idea of others, to bring in our high potentials, our young talent, to make sure that what we were doing could resonate to really all age groups, because we know that within the buying centers that we serve, that we're dealing with people that are just coming into roles on maybe just a couple of years out of university, all the way through to new people managers and obviously senior leaders who had been in the business for quite some time.
Yeah.
So we knew we needed to tackle a couple of different generations, and we couldn't limit it to our own bias.
Yeah, I think that's great. I don't hear that a lot, but it makes sense. The challenge usually is the people in organizations who are running them have been doing this for a long time. Maybe they're only going to be around for 5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
So the fact that you did go to younger folks to make sure it resonated with them, I think that's a good move. So what was the outcome of all this? You mentioned that it rolled out in different phases. The web launched afterwards, but what was like collectively looking back at it? How did everything work?
We did an official launch at an event that was held, actually, it was a trade show that was in one of our target markets. And it tied very well with the strap line and really sort of the key themes that resonated and were woven throughout the messaging and positioning. So it tied very well. There was, as you might expect, a full-on media plan. We also spent a lot of time on internal communication. So what did it mean for our employees? Why was this important? What would it mean? And how did it, how would that thread work through with what we were doing for people experience through HR and other meetings? We also took it as an opportunity to really start to accelerate our internal communications. That's something that was hadn't really taken off. And it was really a focus for our CEO. So we used that as a launch point to really to build that out. And I think codify those channels and begin using them in a much more structured way. So you think about the internal, and you think about with customers, through partners, and ultimately with our investors. So there was a couple of different stages. And then it was continuing the drumbeat, building upon that. And then obviously we had the rollout in the following spring of the website.
Yeah.
Which I think really, it gave people a way to engage more deeply and with a lot of content then that very much tied to what we were doing across the brand, cross product.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. Mike, by the way, I'm in the 20 plus year club too. So we have that in common. But
Wow.
I started out in B2C marketing right out of college. And I just always remember the luxury of like, well, you just do a rebrand, you buy a bunch of media and you're done. And jumping into B2B a long time ago, it was just like, it's way more complex. Like the customer facing thing, even though that's the most important, it's often the least effort to get there, right? It's the internal and the partners and the employees that are really
It
uh,
really is. And, you really have to bring people along in the journey, and the employee piece may end up being the most important because they are going to be people that are your connection points, are going to be talking about the reasons why, what does it mean to them, what does it mean to whatever audience they're speaking to. So that became a big focus. At the time, we also launched a social advocacy tool so people could begin to use social again in a more structured way, in a way that made it easy for them. And it wasn't just, corporate propaganda. Certainly there was, information, there were customer stories and press releases and other things that they could share, but equally they could promote, those topics that were important to them through those channels. So that became a key tool for them as part of
yeah.
this larger effort.
Yeah, I love the social advocacy, and I think what you said is important is the anyone in charge of a program like that has quickly learned, oh my God, I cannot turn this into propaganda because people
No,
won't share it. So
not
it's
no.
I think it's a great challenge to any marketer to truly say, if the content isn't interesting, it will not be shared, and you have no reach through your employees who share it. So it's always fun to create a win-win. All right, anything else you want to share about the first case study?
I would just say that, most of your audience is going to know this, but I would say for those, coming into marketing or maybe being swayed to, we need to just change the color palette and throw up a new logo and a few other things that, take a step back and really start to map out uh, all of the different touch points and, why is it important to them? Is what you're doing, is the message authentic to your audience, to your employees, potentially to your investors, your partners? Really do take the time to do that homework. Do speak to customers, do speak to to other people that you know that have been through the process. There's a lot of learnings out there. And also take the time to check, what others are doing. Not always necessarily competitors, but who's doing it well in the market. And I think that there's a lot of things that one can take and start to put in, I'll call it the salad bowl of ideas to help you shape out what your plan is and rigorously pressure test. Don't be afraid to have people challenge your ideas. But once you make a decision, you do have to go because there's a lot of work that's got to come with bringing this to life.